Good evening. Welcome to Book Talk. I'm your host, Barbara Anderson. This month we'll be delving into America's history and its rich tapestry. Tonight we have a fascinating author with us. He has written a book entitled Presidential Assassinations, Tragedy of a Nation. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ronald Bernard. Professor Bernard, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Barbara.
Oh, please, call me Barbara.
If you insist.
I do. Thank you. Before we get into your book, I'd like to talk about you. How did you get started?
It's interesting. Well, I have always had a fascination with history, especially the kind that takes place in the past. And when I was a young boy, we had a library, and in that library, I found a book of old men with mustaches, and I was fascinated. And I wanted to learn more about these beautiful mustachioed men.
Interesting.
Yes, and my father had this jacket with these patches on it, and I found this pipe in a dumpster behind an Arby's, and fate led me to this life.
Remarkable. If you don't mind, I'd like to dive right into your book.
Of course.
Presidential assassinations. That's actually a very hot button topic. You make some pretty shocking claims in here. Would you care to explain?
No.
Your premise is that all of our nation's presidents have been assassinated.
That's true.
You're saying none of them had died of natural causes.
Not a sausage.
That's an interesting claim, Professor. Some critics have called you and your book outrageous, preposterous, and downright stupid. Oh, how do you react to these criticisms?
Barbara, that is poppycock, hogwash malarkey. It is merely the establishment trying to sell these American people the lies and propaganda that they insist on selling. I'm sorry. Apologize. I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
George Washington, our first president. History says that he died of old age in his bed.
That's a popular myth. No. He was killed with an axe by a man named Harlan Cherry, a peach farmer.
Fascinating. What about John Adams, our second president?
Well, his assassin assassinated him by throwing a toaster oven into his bath while he bathed in the nude.
Your mind works in mysterious ways, Professor.
Yes, my thinking is a tad unorthodox.
Oh, you're Jewish.
No, but I am unorthodox.
Of course. What happened to Millard Fillmore?
He was injected with poisonous killer nanobots. Now, the first attempt was just with poisonous nanobots, but it was the killer nanobots on the second attempt that got him eventually.
And who did this?
The Cherokee Indians, as revenge for taking their land and their car.
Okay, so I'm going to name a few presidents and would like you to tell us how they were assassinated.
Indubitably.
Martin Van Buren.
Martin Van Buren, his plane was hit with an ICBM missile.
Amazing. Grover Cleveland?
Killed by a Godzilla.
Killed by the Godzilla?
Well, I don't know if it was the Godzilla. I just know that it was a Godzilla.
Okay. Ulysses S. Grant.
Ulysses S. Grant had an anvil dropped in his head, cartoon style.
Oh. Richard Nixon.
Ninjas. The teenage mutant kind. Heroes in a half shell. My ass!
Gerald Ford.
He was killed by Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh, a ghost assassination. Dastardly.
Quite dastardly.
Rutherford B. Hayes.
Rutherford B. Hayes. He was kicked in the head by a horse.
How is that an assassination? And if so, by whom?
The Soviets. They gave that horse president face-kicking death pills.
That's an oddly specific type of drug, Professor.
Well, that is the KGB for you.
Well, I see that you have Jimmy Carter in here, but isn't he still alive?
Is he?
Yes, I think so.
Is he?
Wait, is he?
is he?
You pose an interesting question, Professor.
Yes, it's a paradigm, a schema, a foie, a metacognitive, a raison d'etre, a queensryche, if you will, a priapism, if you will. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying.
Of course I don't. So, now, here's one I find troubling. General Dwight Eisenhower.
Yes, he was run over by a Sherman tank.
Didn't he die in his bed?
Yes, he was sleeping in his bed on the 3rd floor.
Oh, that's just mean.
Yes.
Well, moving on. Well, we all know about the assassinations of Lincoln and JFK.
I'm afraid I must stop you there. Unfortunately, those were the only 2 not assassinated.
Are you sure? Well, then what happened?
Dramatic pause. Suicide.
Holy moly.
Yes, unfortunately, they shot themselves in the head. It's quite sad. Quite sad.
I have to say, Professor, I find this all quite fantastical. You seem to contradict all known history and facts. May I inquire about your schooling?
If you must, yes. I graduated from West Beverly High, valedictorian. Then I did my undergraduate at Hamburger University, and transferred to the Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and finally got my PhD from a little school called Hogwarts.
Well, I apologize for questioning your credentials.
Apology accepted, common mistake.
So, what do you have planned for your next book?
I have already started researching my new subject, and I believe it will prove quite intriguing.
Oh, well, you've piqued my interest. May I ask what it's about?
Yes, it is a history of the penis.
Oh, how intriguing.
Yes.
I can't wait to sink my teeth into that one. And I know my audience can't wait to get their hands on it.
Well, it will be quite thick, but I believe they will all find it quite satisfying.
Well, thank you, Professor.
It has been your pleasure, Barbara.
Well, that's all for this edition of Book Talk. Have a good night. Now, go read a book.